So wanted to welcome everybody. This is, I think, at least the fifth in our continuing series of around the work table discussions. And because it's May, we thought it was time to start talking about how to make summer school this year a little more effective and yet make it fun. So we had a couple of, there we go. So you've got the TMU team with you. I'm Dr. Sandra Elliott. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Touch Math. So I've been an educator. I'm in my fifth decade. I was a SPED teacher, a SPED administrator. I've been with Eureka Math, and now I'm home at Touch Math. So I get to combine everything I know about mathematics and special education and work with this phenomenal team, training, working on product, and most importantly, getting to work with y'all. Randy is got about the same amount of time in, maybe even more than I do. She's also been a special ed administrator. And I think when I write down what I know about Randy, probably the thing about her is she's been at the local, state, and national level. She supports Hawaii and Florida. She's been with the TIES group, so a lot of information on math and special ed there. Dr. Teresa Shattuck comes to us from Dallas, and she has run the ASD and the severe and moderate side of the Dallas classrooms. So she just ran a phenomenal workshop for us 2 weeks ago, was it, Teresa?
Yes.
On ASD. Very, very well attended, and it looks like it's going out across the network. So she spent she only admits to 20 years, I think it's longer, but supervising classrooms for Dallas. So, and last is Alicia Stevens. So she is joining us. She is also a former SPED teacher. She specialized a little bit more in literacy. And so, but she's also a tech specialist. She is who is moving us towards having lots of options and things to use. So that being said, we'd like to get to know a little bit about you. If you would very quickly go into the chat, you can find it down at the bottom probably. And if you don't see it, it's over and under those three little bullets for more. Go in and introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, and what you're currently teaching. We're going to take a few minutes and sort of get to know everybody.
Dr. Elliott, a question is asked, is there a recording of that ASD session?
Yes, it should be actually under resources on our website.
See that inclusion, very nice. From Arizona.
Sherry, work-based learning. I love that.
California. Got a couple people from California. We've got somebody from Austin, Texas.
Right.
We are in Maine. Hello, I heard it's cold up there. Medically fragile. That's a specialty of mine as well, Paula.
Gina,
we have
kids with autism.
We have preschool and 4th and 5th grade resource. We've got Nevada in the house and Baltimore. Got more people from Texas.
You used to be in Cindy Marie. You used to be in Dallas, or you're in Dallas now?
Well, and welcome to Gigi's. Members of the Gigi's team join us a fair amount. Very interesting group, and you do a lot of great work. So congrats on that.
Hi, Christina, homeschool parent. And I did something in with homeschool. We also should have that to talk about.
Candace from Pflugerville. Actually, it's just Pflugerville with a P, extra P in front of it.
I was wondering who's going to take a stab at that one. It would be you from Texas.
Yeah.
We've got Margaret from Seattle, and Angela is an induction coach. So you're working with those new students, those new teachers, Angela?
Okay, let's wrap it up. I think just about everybody was able to get in and introduce themselves. So thank you for that.
We have a student teacher.
Oh, awesome. Welcome to the education family. You'll find out that it's a very warm one. So, all right, as always, this is professional development. So we've got some goals, but we're going to not spend equal amounts of time on all of them. We wanted to start off with a real quick acknowledgement and just spend a few minutes talking about the differences between summer school and extended school year, because some of you are going to be in one or both, depending on how you're doing your summer and the parts of that, what's important about it. But we're going to spend most of our time in looking at ways to really prioritize the math skills for summer school or extended school year, regardless of which one you're in. And then we're going to have the best fun. We really saved a big chunk of time at the end, and you're going to definitely want to probably a notepad. And remember, we do record these, so it will be on the resource page of our website, along with all the other resources for about 3 months. We are going to have, you'll probably see 40 or 50 ideas of things to use during summer school that are different than what you might use during the regular year, because we know that there's a lot to cover. So we were thinking we were really prioritizing social emotional learning. So making math fun, not just for students, but for us, and yet accomplishing what needs to be done and using evidence-based practices. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to be covering 3 evidence-based practices, but when the 4 of us at TMU get together, we kind of go hog wild. So I stopped counting at about 15. So I'm not even going to acknowledge, but just know that almost everything you see, we can trace back to evidence or research that's been going on for decades, not just about Touch Math, but in these instructional strategies and the learning techniques for the students. So getting it kicked off, summer school or extended school year, you're going to be doing one or the other. Extended school year is usually a very small subpopulation of the IEP students, and it is written into the IEP, and it's about making absolutely sure that nothing is lost. And it doesn't have to always be summer school. Sometimes it can be actually extending the school day. But so there will be some students that are in that, and you do follow that IEP. And then everybody else is summer school. And everything I'm picking up from most everybody, if the summer schools that are going to be going on will continue to probably be based on either a cut score from the state assessments that are happening right now. An invitation will be sent to parents, so parents have the option. And the focus of instruction, I'm hearing a lot of different things. A lot of it is using the words remediation. Some are using the words acceleration. Some are focusing just on literacy. I haven't heard of anybody yet who's going to be focusing just on math. So in summer school, you're looking at remediation, which might be that consistent instruction to moving the kids forward, knowing where the gap was, but it's the entire summer school. Compare that to an intervention, which may only take a day. In the course of remediation, you're struggling, so I may do an intervention. And then acceleration is where we really want to spend some time, because we know we don't have a lot of time for summer school. So how can we target what's important so that when the students walk in the door in August or September, they really are as ready as they can be. There may be instances of unfinished learning. I'm hearing, I saw some reports that are saying it's not as big, but I think that is something that is so specific to a child. We just have to accept that we want to have the kids ready for the start of school. Those of you that are working on ESY, you're following those IEPs, you're using the data, you're also using it in summer school, a little harder to get at maybe, and you're minimizing the regressions, and you're working on that continuation of the critical skills for the students. So why are we so focused on acceleration and remediation? And I think what we wanted to do was really acknowledge here that summer school is short. 4 weeks, possibly 6 weeks. Difficult to do a lot. Many of you will be in classrooms that were not your physical classroom, or you may still be working in a hybrid situation. You may probably have some students who are not the ones that you have been working with for the past year to 18 months. So that makes it difficult. Short period of time. Students are coming from lots of different areas. So in those cases, we have to get them ready for school, but yet we know there's gaps. So and we want to focus on grade level materials absolutely as much as possible. And the key thing is probably that bottom one. Can we do this in a summer school? Because we know that SEL right now, some kids are fragile, their lives have been overturned and upended for the last 14 to 16 months. Can we give them the success if they haven't had it during the rest of the year, so that when they enter school, they do it with a positive light, which will help with behavior problems and everything. So getting organized. So we're going to frame everything that we do for the next 50 minutes, including the questions that we answer for you at the end. And we're going to try and save a nice chunk for that. On that classic teaching cycle of you plan, you assess. I need to know what my students know and don't know. I plan and I teach. So we're going to talk in assessment about summatives, formatives, and informals. We've broken down formative to a slightly different one and added informal to it. But planning, determining, designing, developing those lessons that we're going to be doing, and then the real crux of it, when we're actually with the child and interacting with them. And when it comes to mathematics, making sure that we target when we're working on a skill or a concept, are we making sure the student is doing it when they're ready for abstract, or do they need to do some representational modeling or some concrete modeling of that concept as they move through, with the end goal, of course, being the abstract one? So where do we begin? So assessment. Randy, I'm going to let you kick it off here. We don't have a lot of time as far as summer school. We got to make headway. We've got all these things being tossed at us. What's a good place to start?
So this has been a super crazy year, and even gathering formative data during distance learning has been a real challenge. Most states, even if they've completed their large-scale summative assessments, don't have their results back. So as a teacher, I want to know what my students can and cannot do. There's a few ways that I can use my Touch Math materials for this purpose. And as I'm focusing on my part today, I'm really going to try and stay with what we have for Touch Math. So whether I'm using the printed materials, the green editions, or the Touch Math Pro, there are assessment materials included. So remember, I don't need to have a student complete 25 problems to figure out what they know and can do. Most times I can determine that in a handful of problems. I don't even need pencil or paper if I'm going informal. I can set up manipulatives on a desk and have students solve the problem and find out that way whether they can do this or not do this. The key here is making sure that I'm choosing what I want to assess and keeping the data organized. So if you have Touch Math Pro, you have reports that will help you do that. If you don't have Touch Math Pro and you want to hop over to the Touch Math website and click on resources and scroll down, we have, and I'm going to hold it up here so if you see it. I know it's difficult to see, but there's Excel spreadsheets that are there for your use so that you can be documenting this progress monitoring. What did they get? What didn't they get? So you'll find helpful resources to download there to support your planning for student success.
I also think that you need to look at your state standards and be pretty familiar with those. You're probably aware that math, maybe above all subjects, spirals. Those skills spiral. The skills that you learn in first grade are foundational to skills that you're going to work on in 7th grade. So in Touch Math, we talk about the research-based strategy of concrete, representational, and abstract. We need to determine at which stage each student is functioning. They may be at the concrete stage in one skill, but at the abstract skill stage in a different skill. So they could be at different stages for mathematical skills. Finding those skills to find the skills that they need for next year's learning. Even though ESY is to minimize regression, you can still start preparing them for what they're going to be picking up on in the next phase of their math learning. Be familiar with the math expectations for at least one grade level above and one grade level behind the grade level that the student is working. I'm a firm believer in writing goals at the student's grade level according to their age. However, you may be writing objectives, goals and objectives that are the prerequisite skills for the working level of that student. Crucial skills are those that may be necessary for independent living, for self-advocacy. The IEP needs to address those crucial skills, and they should be maintained each year. They may include money, time, rote counting, one-to-one correspondence, and basic number sense.
Well, and I thank you for that, Teresa and Randy. And I'd love to jump in here just to add my 2 cents, if you will. And I love doing it from the technology perspective. We've got so many options available to us now. And what I love about technology is it gives us a chance to, our students don't even know that they're really being assessed or that they're learning. They're just having a good time when they're engaging with the technology. So it gives us this sort of covert way of doing assessment in this case. So a couple of things I wanted to share with you. One, our counting and addition apps, the Touch Math mobile apps, provide a multi-sensory experience for our students that they can use on their tablets, and it allows each individual students to really play to their strengths and play their way through math, if we could say it that way. And so while they're doing that, the teacher then has the option of accessing a dashboard to help you track student progress. And so to be clear, the basic counting app is available on the App Store and Google Play Store. And then there's also a basic addition app, which is currently optimized for the iPad only. So you can access it in the App Store. And both of those are free, the basic counting and the basic addition apps. Whereas the teacher dashboard, it does require an annual subscription, and that can be purchased for about $49 for up to 40 students. Now, I had to, that's the hand that feeds me, Touch Math, right? So I had to go ahead and give that shameless plug. But I also want to speak to those of you who just want, okay, what's out there that's free for me? So another powerful data collection tool that's available for everyone and gives you the ability to capture student perceptions and performance through quizzes and assessments is the Google Forms app. So we're all familiar with Google Forms, or at least Google, if nothing else, in Google Drive. Well, within there, you have access to the Google Forms app. And that gives us a variety of question types like true, false, multiple choice, short answer, long answer, drop down, lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, right? We have all of this available to us so that we can do things as simple as asking quick polls or creating exit tickets, all the way to more in-depth auto-graded quizzes. And even, I don't know if you've seen this, but escape rooms where teachers can create, you can create a scavenger hunt of sorts, and students are then rewarded for their correct answers by escaping the room. So we know automatically if they get out of the room, they know the answers. If they don't, then they need some help getting out of the room. So again, technology allows us to sort of infiltrate in a very covert way this learning process whereby we're assessing our students, but also they're enjoying it at the same time.
All right, so if I summarized, let's see if I can get my, what I heard from you guys, you could see me working in the background, for assessment, knowing how do I figure out where the students are, especially if I don't have, these aren't my normal students that I've had and I've had to make some quick decisions. Take a look at state and local standardized assessments. Those can be summatives and formatives. I've got my IEPs. If I've got students that are remedial or this is core, so I'm looking at those crucial skills. And then formative assessments. Everything from the technology pieces or the simple not so technology, observation, benchmarks. So there's a lot of ways that we can determine what we think the child knows and is able to do and sort of determine an entry point. And here's one of those things where as a teacher for a long time, there really is no, if you don't have all the data, it shouldn't make us freeze. It's you do the best that you can and then you adjust on the fly. This is one of those areas where teachers are famous for being flexible And you know, when you give the child the problems and they simply struggle, you know to take a step back and figure it out. Question number 2. So now I know what I sort of have the data and the information. Now I've got a plan. What do I do? And planning is much bigger than just that written lesson plan. So we wanted to spend some time on this one. And hopefully you sort of caught the way we're trying to throw out ideas for you guys. Randy is focusing on things that you have access to in Touch Math, the free and the ones that are, you buy. Teresa's going after all those things that are out there that are available to everybody. And then Alicia's sort of riding the fence. She's got a little bit of both, but she's focused on technology. So Randy, I'm going to ask you to start with the planning phase. What can they be accessing?
So lessons, as we all know, should always be explicit, systematic, structured, and scaffolded. So our lessons need to be based in research-based strategies, such as model, lead, test, or what many of us know as I do, we do, you do, or CRA, which is the basis of strong math instruction, which you referenced a little earlier, Elliot, on that concrete to representational to abstract. So when we're determining the layout of our instruction, we always want to include that quick warm up. And this might be counting touch points, practicing backward counting, or singing skip counting patterns. So regardless of whether we're teaching an ESY session or summer school, when we have our Touch Math lesson plans, we still want to practice in a way that's different than we typically do in the school year. I want to plan activities that use more games, arts and crafts, music, and movement. So determining what to teach may be the same as the school year because I have my Touch Math lesson plans that are going to help me move my students forward. But the design of a lesson needs to feel different. Not just for the students, but for the teachers too, because it's all of our summer. So I want to use my Touch Math lesson plans, but I want to shake it up.
And another way to engage in your planning, whether you're planning for the whole summer or just planning for that week, to steal a quote from Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. When you start planning for the summer, what is the end result? If you're teaching summer school, that result is different than if you're teaching extended school year services. What does the student absolutely need to know in order to be more independent in the home and in the community? How are we preparing them for life after high school? Contrary to the opinion of most high school students, we do need to learn math and we do use it every day. So keeping that in mind will help you plan. Plan activities that show how dependent we are on math each day. You might have a class store or a snack shop. You may play games that require scorekeeping. There's cooking. Planning an event where there might be goodie bags or prizes, and the students have to develop a budget. Another part of planning with the end in mind is planning for next year, preparing the students for their next year of math challenges. If I'm teaching 5th grade, what are some skills that are going to be necessary in 6th grade that I might start helping them get a handle on those so they're not blindsided whenever they have to face it. Looking at the IEPs and the standards that will be addressed the next year, I usually recommend to the teachers to group their students according to the similar goals, so that you can plan activities for a small group of students instead of all individual activities. Lesson plans are the key. I don't see how you get through a day without a lesson plan. And I would always over plan. Just when you think a student is only going to, or students are only going to take 20 minutes to accomplish something, they'll be done in 5. And you'll be standing there going, okay, what now? So over plan. Randy mentioned the fun things, the games, arts and crafts, movement, music. These are excellent activities where we can reinforce math skills. Adding the dice together on a board game, playing Yahtzee, making up dance moves by having a grid with the numbers randomly placed on the grid, and you call out numbers, kind of like a takeoff on Twister, but they have to put their feet on those numbers and they have to make up a dance move that goes with it. Going on a nature walk, taking pictures, coming back and talking about what they saw, but maybe doing a graph or making up some math problems that go along with what they observed. And then playing old-fashioned dominoes to practice multiples of 5 and having to add more than 2 numbers at a time. Remember, we don't just sit down every day and do some math. Now, I might think that's fun, but most people would not. We tend to remember lessons that occur in a natural flow. And so plan your lessons set up by the activity instead of the subject. So your lesson plans might be arts and crafts, music, movement, PE, social skills, whatever that is, whatever you've decided, and then plug in the boring names under those. So in arts and crafts, we may be touching on English language arts and math, or science, or social studies. Plan it around, especially during the summer, plan it around those fun activities and make the learning meaningful for the students.
I absolutely love that. That is all about changing our mindset, right? Changing our mindset and helping our students change their mindset. Let's call it something fun and then just sneak in the other stuff underneath. And that really is what we do with technology. As I mentioned before, it gives us this opportunity to sort of covertly go in. And when we're using the technology, we really are speaking our students' language for what may be the first time in a long time. And speaking of shifting mindsets, I know that we've gone through quite a bit in this past year, obviously, and we all keep thinking, okay, when we go back to normal, when we go back to normal. But I would suspect that we're never going to go back to where we started, thus the term new normal, right? So it'll be our new normal, but I would guess that our new normal will still include Zoom or some form of Zoom, right? So as we're planning our instruction, let's not forget to plan to use the features and functions that are built into our virtual conferencing systems that allow us to facilitate instruction, that allow us to deliver instruction, but also collect feedback as we're going through. So you've seen today, we've used the chat feature of Zoom. This allows for formative assessment in the moment of learning. So we can see, do our students get it? We can use the nonverbal responses, the thumbs up, thumbs down, the check mark, the, what is it, the check and the plus. I forget what they are. One's green and one's red. I do remember that. There's also the polling feature. So we can prepare the questions that we want to ask in advance. But again, it's something we have to plan for to make sure that we are varying our instruction as we go through and that we don't feel so limited by the technology, but we use the technology to empower the learning as well as the learner and even the teacher. We have breakout rooms in Zoom that allows for small group remediation and intervention activities. So how can you plan for the use of breakout rooms, putting the students into those different groups, and who can help moderate those groups if it's just you, or if you have a paraprofessional, or if you have students that are self-directed to some degree, how can you provide that opportunity for them to go into breakout rooms? And then also don't forget the recording feature. The recording feature allows you to provide instruction asynchronously for obviously for when you're not around. And if you're recording the lesson, this provides an opportunity for those students who were either absent or maybe they are still remotely learning. This allows for you to just, for students to that were even there. They can go back to the recording later on. And even your parents, they especially love the recordings because they may struggle with math themselves. So if they have a recording of you teaching the lesson, oh my gosh, they are just, that couldn't be more helpful. So consider that. Consider Zoom, or if you're using Google Meet or whatever the case may be, how you can use that to help you plan for effective instruction. I also, obviously, I can't forget Touch Math Pro, because Randy mentioned it earlier. This is our digital platform, and it empowers educators to easily identify the needs and then plan for your intervention and remediation activities for your learners. And this comes in the form of personalized learning plans. This is the center of Touch Math Pro. And if you have access to Touch Math Pro, the first thing you'll notice is these two visually distinct rainbows that help you identify the learner's needs and then customize the instruction accordingly. There are two rainbows. One is a skills rainbow, one is a grades rainbow. The grades rainbow, as the name implies, it just lets you go through grade by grade, teaching sequentially. Whereas the skills rainbow, it's the 60,000-foot visual representation of the math learning progressions, right? And that's what all the math standards are based on. So we can use the skills rainbow to align the intervention strategies to foundational and target skills. And when you look at the rainbow, if a student is at one place on the you want them at one place on the rainbow, it'll tell you, but if he's struggling with that place, drop them down to here. And so a lot of times we may know there's a problem, we just don't know what the problem is. Touch Math Pro helps us identify the problem and then serves up the plan for how to remediate or intervene for that problem. So those are just two suggestions. Again, Zoom and Touch Math Pro, depending on what your level of access are, on how we can help plan for instruction.
Okay, so that was a lot. I hope everybody was taking some notes, but if not, you'll get the recording so you can go back and listen to that. So we have determined what our student knows from a variety of sources. We've sort of planned out everything. And I think you heard in the planning part, we weren't talking just about the lesson from the classroom. We were talking about the day, the full time that I'm doing mathematics, but even the actual activity. And the whole point for that is planning is going to help us address the skills, but it's also going to decrease stress. When you're not stressed, it helps the students, which gets them back on an even keel. And we talked a lot about making the lessons meaningful. You can have a lot of fun during summer school. We've only got the little ones, for not so little ones also, for a couple of weeks. So get yourself organized, use the tools you have at hand. We listed out a lot that are free and easily available to just about everybody. And so we've got those two segments done. Now we're going to spend a huge amount of time in the teaching part. So we're going to take all those things that we talked about and many more and get down into how do you actually do this with the children and the things that it will be targeting for you, because there are some key things we want to touch in mathematics: increasing fluency, making sure that they can do word problems, that they've got the math vocabulary, all of those things that we talked about in the assessment that are important to make sure they are ready when we're looking at the scope and sequence, when we're looking at next year's scope and sequence, when we're looking at what they're going to be assessed on a couple of years down. What do we want to get them as close to being ready, accelerating them through so when they walk in the school the first day, they have made progress towards that. So Randy, I'm going to hand it back to you, and you can start talking to us about some of the things that the actual instruction, when the students are with me, either face-to-face or virtually, we can be doing that does all of this and accelerates learning.
So I'm going to talk about touch points, because touch points are like the foundation of a building. When students build fluency with touch points, they become this backup system for everything from addition right on up through our pre-algebra. Remember, we had that concrete, representational, and abstract. And so those touch points begin as a real concrete piece. They also help us build an understanding of how to count money and how to tell time. So because of this, I want to build in time for direct instruction in teaching touch points and having my students use them throughout the day. So one of the things I want to tell you is that on the Touch Math website, under, again, going to resources and then tools, you're going to find a free poster of the touch points and how to use them. And that's real helpful because we can download it, we can print it, we can email it home to parents. And so we can make this a very useful tool.
Randy,
Gonna,
is
yes.
that the poster the one behind you on the wall? The
Ah,
one-
thank you. It is this
Yeah.
one behind me on the wall. It's just a smaller version. And it has explanations with it. So it's a little different, but it does function in much that same way. So we're going to use these touch points as we teach counting and cardinality, where numerals and number concepts. And we have touch points that are on our number lines. And I'm going to talk about number lines today because this is one of the 6 identified tools that are recommended from our national organizations. And we have number cards. We have 3D magnetic numbers. We have phone numbers. So we have free downloadable fun dice, which I kind of mentioned a little earlier, and lesson plans that go along with how to use them and how to make games out of them. The touch points come with pictures on them. There are plain ones. There are plastic textured touch points. So there's a lot of different physical manipulatives that we can use to put on our numbers. So anytime, anywhere we see a number, we can talk about it and play with it with our touch points. So let's talk about what that might look like. You know, I can use 2 different colors of Play-Doh, and it's a great way to have students create their own touch points while getting the benefits of fine motor play. For numbers 1 to 9, a student would need a total of 45 touch points if they were going to have the same. So I might give my students a grid in which they can draw their own touch points. I can Xerox each student's grid so that they have 45 touch points. They can color them in, cut them out, paste them on their own set of numbers to make a book. And you can have the kids take the book home and show their family how the touch points work, or use their touch points books in class to help them set up written problems, right? Whichever way we approach this, we want to help students develop the concepts of these touch points, get that automaticity and the visualization of where they go on the numbers. So in a touch math classroom, we're going to see posters. We're going to see manipulatives. We're going to see workbooks, software that Alicia's been talking about, and more. So this multisensory approach lets teachers use all the touch math components and then expand on them. So for instance, we know the importance of the number line, and we want every student to have their own. So this summer, maybe we can have our students use crafts to create their own number lines with touch points, large and small. We can use sidewalk chalk and have teams try and create the most unique number line on the school sidewalk. How about taking butcher paper and hanging it at student height along the wall, and then the students can go up and create their touch points on these numbers. Depending on the social distancing rules at your school, you can use touch math free downloadable games. We have our own dominoes, and each one of these has 5 different, I don't know if you could see it in my camera, up, they're falling out of my box now. Dominoes games. We also have, I can get it out here, number cards. What we used to call flashcards. And on one side they have our touch points, and on the other side they don't, so that we're beginning to fade those kinds of things. So we have lots of different ways. The bottom line is that whether we're using the things that we buy from TouchMath, or we're creating some of our own, as Teresa is talking about, we are using the TouchMath concept of those touch points, right? That is your basis. So for me, the objective is to offer fun opportunities for students to use and practice their math skills throughout the day, and making sure that we're consistently going back, and that our students really understand why the touch points are there and how to use them in problem solving.
Well, I want to talk about backward counting and some ideas that I've come up with for practicing that. Backward counting is the foundation for subtraction. It's important to practice backward counting at least from 18. That's the necessity, but you can always do it from a higher number. And practice it several times a day in different ways until it becomes almost as natural as counting forward. Backward counting is not natural to me. I start doing the backward counting and you can see me thinking, okay, what's the next number? What's the next number? So I never got a lot of practice at this. One idea that I came up with is if you have 18 stickers and you're going to have the class, you're going to hand out the stickers and the class is going to count down, that'll show how many stickers are left. So if I tell you, okay, we've got 18 stickers, I'm going to give Randy a sticker. How many stickers? 17. Now I'm going to give Alicia a sticker. How many are left? 16. And we would go down until we are out of stickers. That just helps practice going backwards. You could do backwards hopscotch. Draw a regular hopscotch grid on a sidewalk or on the playground. And then instead of starting from 1, you start from 10. For older students, you might do a gallery walk. You can do this for younger students too, but remember earlier I mentioned if you did a nature walk and you took pictures, well, you might have different stations set up in the room that have the pictures, maybe a video, maybe a little article about some kind of plant that you saw or an animal that you saw. And the students will start at one of those stations. You set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes to allow them time to engage in that station. And then they have to go, if they started at station 12, now they've got to go to station 11. But the trick is station 11 is not just right next door to 12. So they've got to keep in mind, I'm looking for 11, and then scan the room to see where that station is. And then they would go to 10, 9, 8, so forth. Then there's the idea of if I want a student to give me a certain number of pens, I'm going to say, give me 4 pens, but I want them to start with the number 4 instead of the number 1. And they'll count 4, 3, 2, 1. I have 4 pens, but they counted backwards from 4. So you could do that with blocks or paper clips or crayons. Another activity that might appeal to older students is to have them, they're going to have kind of a competition as to whose paper airplane goes farther. So they build their paper airplanes and then, or they may build a kite and see who can get their kite in the air higher. And they would do blast off countdown. Another one that works for all ages is using a ball or a bean bag, and you space the students around the room. This is not to throw at them, it is to toss to them. And so you say, okay, we're going to start with whoever has the number 12. And so student number 12 now has to find student 11 and toss the beanbag or the ball to student 11. And they count backwards that way. Everybody has to be on alert because they're not standing in order. So they're having to scan, and they may have to shout out, who's number 11? So it gets them engaged, it gets them moving, but they're counting backwards. You could line up the students and pick a random number like 5. And I say, okay, the first student in line is going to say 5, and we're going to count backward to 1. And when whoever says 1 now becomes the line leader. So that's a good way to not only have them counting backwards, but to change up who is going to be line leader on a given day. So it's kind of fun to think about how many. Counting backwards is not something that we typically do. We rote count. We may even skip count a lot. Counting by 5s, counting by 2s. Backwards counting takes a little bit of thought, but if you incorporate it into these fun activities, and again, you're teaching math, but you're doing it in the activities that we don't often address during the summer because we're so intent on doing the subject matter.
Absolutely. Well, I love all of those ideas. As you were both talking, I thought, oh, I'm going to go and find my dominoes game and play dominoes this week. And then I thought, wow, I wonder if there's an online dominoes game, because I'm always thinking about the technology. And then I thought about the hopscotch and the backward counting hopscotch. And I got to be honest, hopscotch challenged me at my core because I'm just not coordinated to that degree. And I thought, okay, backwards hopscotch could be troubling for me, but I'm going to give it a try. It'll absolutely be fun from a coordination standpoint and a math standpoint. But I've got to be honest, I was one of those people that I struggled with math growing up all the way until college. I struggled through math. And it wasn't until college I took a course called Teaching Algebra to Elementary Students. And it finally clicked that somewhere in there, I missed that transition from concrete to representational to abstract. And it's those suggestions that you all have made, these concrete suggestions are the ones that for me would have made all the difference in the world. And then to take that one step further, if we take a look at technology, a couple of things I wanted to suggest then, one being Touch Math Connect. And I think I saw it come up in the chat here or one of the Q&A just a moment ago, but I wasn't paying close attention. But Touch Math Connect is another interactive software program, but it is a full software program. And this time it brings the Touch Math methodology to the computer screen or even your interactive classroom display. So your interactive whiteboard or your interactive flat panel, whatever the case may be. So now students of all ages and abilities can engage directly with their desktop or again, this front of class display, interactive display to count, to add, subtract, to skip count, as Randy mentioned, multiply, divide, and even more. They can use this technology then. And what is also pretty cool about it is that we can customize problem choices, playlists, even touch points. So it gives you the power to create individualized learning experiences for each student, each group, or even the entire classroom. The software program provides for sample problems, guided voice direction, and with positive reinforcement, right? And then step by step, these interactions make it a great addition to the classroom just because it becomes interactive and it's not your voice again and again and again. It is, it's another voice and one that they enjoy. So Touch Math Connect 1 helps students develop their foundations in critical math concepts, touching and counting patterns, number concepts, addition, subtraction, and then Touch Math Connect 2 helps your students build on that foundation. And now it covers skip counting, multiplication, division, pre-algebra, and fractions. So keep that in mind. If you want to go and take a look at that, you would find that on our website for Touch Math Connect 1 and 2. Now, again, as promised, I wanted to make sure you had access to something that isn't going to cost you any money, but it is also rooted in Touch Math. We encourage math literacy and the development of math language by recommending children's books that we have found both educational and enjoyable and engaging, right? So I love it because it combines two of my loves, technology and literacy. So at the end of each of our lower grades modules, Touch Math customers will find references to literature that has been reviewed by us with this clever tie-in to math, language, and reading. But Touch Math customers and non-customers alike can find readings of many of these books on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for whatever skill. So skip counting, let's say, for example. So you're going to search for skip counting, read aloud books. And what you're going to find, if you did that one, I think it'll yield about 149 books that can be incorporated into the lesson on skip counting, right? So that is absolutely phenomenal. So just go to YouTube. You can do subtraction and read aloud books, subtraction and read aloud books, and you're going to get a ton of suggestions there, books that are being read aloud. Again, it's another voice. The students will see the book, and it's a great way to do that if you don't want to go out and buy the book and read it yourself. Also, this is just a little tip. If you go and Google Touch Math Literature Connections Bibliography, Touch Math Literature Connections Bibliography. I don't know how long this is going to be there. I just happened upon it, but it gives you a bibliography that lists 100 or more suggestions that are made in each unit of our second grade's standards-based kit. So it's our implementation guide for second grade. It's sitting out there. And again, each unit is broken down. So there are 4 units there, and each of them has at least 24, 25 different books that are being recommended to go along with the skills, the specific skills that are being taught in each of those units. So again, it's a great way to bring literacy into the math classroom. And now we're talking math literacy, going back to something Dr. Elliott said in the very beginning, which was making sure that we're developing fluency. And now we're looking at fluency with numbers, we're looking at fluency with words, and we're just bringing it all together and bringing it all home. So back over to you, Dr. Elliott.
Okay, so remember you're getting a recording. So there was a ton there, and you almost have to go through it in little snippets. But to sort of sum up what we did in that one, throughout the day, you heard ways of not just doing it with mathematics, but embedding social studies and science, the other things that we also do during summer school. But there are ways of focusing on fluency, that automaticity that we need with the math facts, ways of bringing in mathematics vocabulary in other subject areas. Alicia just did a wonderful job of talking about all the things that are out there for literary connections to show that math does work in the everyday world. And Teresa had all those everyday activities in there. And then the word problems. So there was that. And in closing, I think if we summed up what we're trying to share that we've learned from y'all and from what we've done, teaching specific skills, putting the math throughout the day, making it meaningful, making it fun, keeps our stress and the student stress down low. It guarantees success. All of those things that we were talking about, many of them, there is no right or wrong, but yet you're still working on those critical skills that are essential for when school starts. So I want to get to the Q&A because I know there's a fair number of people in chat and Q&A. So real quick, a couple of ads and then we're going to open it up. And I want to do a takeaway too from y'all. So we're getting ready to plan our June work table. 1 hour or 2 hour would be a workshop. So any ideas, please feel free to share them. 2 quick, I'll call them ads. We have done, just like we did last summer, some of this stuff we believe is the core of what you could do for summer. If you suddenly find yourself in a room that is not yours and you need materials and they ask, what is it you think you're going to want? We sort of sifted through down to the key Touch Math materials, and you saw us talk about a lot of them. They are on the website under the summer bundles. There's something for a classroom, so this is good for multiple kids. But also if you're working with students where homeschooling or parents want something that comes home so that they can support their child, we've also organized things so that it's just enough for one student, no waste. So would you very quickly go into the chat or the Q&A and share with all of us and each other, and we're going to take the chat and actually print it out and make it one of the resources. One of the ideas that either you like that you're going to adopt whole hog, or one that caused you to come up with one. So take a couple of seconds and go into chat and what's your greatest takeaway from this that you're going to go back and implement? People are typing, so we're looking.
Support
Integrate.
backwards counting, the subtraction, absolutely huge. And don't wait until you're ready to teach it to teach subtraction to start backwards counting. Start early.
Students creating their own number lines. Incorporating fun, that seems to be a big take home. It's just, don't forget to have fun.
Scavenger hunt. Yeah, that's great. The kinesthetic ways to work with touch points.
YouTube.
Mhm. Using pictures to help students.
All right, I'm going to give it about 1 more minute. So, and we'll stay to answer questions for, an additional 10 or so until you guys tire of us. And we're going to take any questions for Alicia in technology first, because she has a hard stop.
Here's a question. Can you mention again what to Google to find the bibliography, Alicia?
Mhm. Absolutely. So that is Touch Math Literature Connections Bibliography. And what you'll find is it is our, it'll say SG Implementation Guide for second grade implementation guide is what that stands for. It should, depending on which browser you're using, I think it's the second result that yields.
Thank you for that, Alicia. So I'm going to
You're
flip
welcome.
Q&A time. Start using that chat if you've shared your takeaway, and thank you for those. We're going to share those with everybody. Shoot us some questions if you got some. I'm looking at the Q&A right now. We got the bibliography, YouTube videos.
What kind of questions can we help you with? And you may, if you have questions for Alicia, maybe on the technology, maybe we get those going for her, because she is going to have to leave us at exactly 2.
So there was a question from Sharon Arkin, and it says, what are your tips for that? And I'm not sure what you're referring to, if that was for me or for someone else. So if you'd like to clarify, I'd love to get that answered for you. Oh, do you have bundles for educational therapists that work with students over several grades? I need this to be affordable as I'm a small business owner and try to provide low cost services. So bundles for educational therapists that work with students over several grades.
Yeah.
Any suggestions?
Yeah, most everything is accessible across multiple grades. Because this is mathematics, it cuts across a lot of grades. So take a look on the school store. And there's actually an implementation manual that's part of the resources. So touchmath.com on the resources, just pull down the implementation guide. It goes into and actually is sort of a quick and dirty, what does each product do? And the grades that it's appropriate for. And in most cases, it's going to be, say, pre-K, K, 1, 2, 3. It'll be multiples. And then if you really want to get into it and talk to us about pricing, shoot us an email and I'll get you to the right person to talk about that. But we like to do a nice balance of things that are free and those that aren't. That's what sort of keeps us going, to make sure there's something for everybody.
Is there a slide, Dr. Elliott, with the email on it? or maybe they have it already.
So Christina's asking, what's a good way to use state standards to make an effective lesson plan? You know, if I have a classroom where I have multi-age, multi-grade students in my classroom, typically an ESY classroom, I'm going to do exactly what Dr. Shattuck spoke about with spiraling lesson plans. I'm going to look to see what's in second grade that spirals to third grade, that spirals to fourth grade, that goes on up, and how can I use a lesson to cover these state standards at each student's level, right? So I want to take a look at that. And a lot of that is going to be based, I'm going to take you back to Touch Math because as a district administrator, I found it so useful, so helpful for my teachers, is that when I look at how the problems move forward, it helps me be able to say, okay, if I'm working on addition, what level of addition do each one of my students need, or subtraction or multiplication, or, you know, working on decimals. So you want to go to that, go back and look at those spiraling standards, and then look at that progression within Touch Math of how we move students forward. So I hope that answers your question. Dr. Shattuck, did you want to?
The other thing, when you're looking at the state standards, they typically, it doesn't matter which state you're in, it doesn't matter if you're doing Common Core, it doesn't matter because, well, math is math is math. So they all come under the same kinds of headings. For example, when I look at the Texas standards, the headings are numbers and computation or something like that. There's a heading. And at each grade level, that heading still exists and the skills under it become more and more advanced. So you key on that heading and you say, okay, I've got students who are still at the numeracy level. They're still making sense of numbers and numerals. And you find that heading, and then you can follow that up to a certain level where that gets repeated and built upon. So just put the heading in your lesson plan and then take notice of what the skill is, how advanced the skill might get, so you can plan your activities. I hope that helps. Sometimes it takes just getting in there and looking at the standards, and over several years, not years of your life, but over the several grade levels, let's put it that way, and seeing that pattern that's built into the standards.
Okay, Christina says you nailed it, so both of you. So, and we want to thank everybody. If there are no more questions, you know how to reach us. I've got the screen back up with our email and who you can also call for questions. So appreciate you all sticking with us. We hope you walk away with something that's useful, and look for us again in June. And if you've got ideas for what you'd like to have us do a workshop on, just shoot us an email. Thanks.